Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights recap episode. We get the week of the National in Cleveland, which I am there, or I will be there in a couple of days. I actually get there Wednesday. This is Monday. This is episode 1250, recapping since 1225. Starting out actually right after that previous recap, I did 12 card wall videos that were put out based on getting a big submission back from BGS. I've got another big group put in, trying to get it in before the National, because I don't think people understand. There's always a lot of questions about grading and BGS, but people don't realize the disruption there is to your whole company and certainly to grading when you take a large group of people to a trade show that's knocks out a whole week, and yet you've got work to do back in the office. Not every grader's going to the National, obviously, but there'll be a lot of work going on in Dallas, and there'll be a lot of work going on in Cleveland. But I wanted to get my cards in before they potentially get behind. Basically, we try not to get behind, but it's hard if you do a lot of business at the National, and the guys and gals work really hard, and you got to give them a little bit of comp time, and yet it's necessary to make a good showing at the Nationals. I'll look forward to popping in on them and see how they're doing without disrupting them too much. But anytime you're on location grading, it's a lot of logistical problems. Anyway, the 12 videos that are just posted to YouTube, that's taking a little bit longer than I thought. It's 8 cards per panel. So I did 12 panels. I'll do some more when I get the stuff back from BGS, but it's fun, but it takes more work than I thought. Yet the final result is I've got a card wall that's getting more and more selectively featuring the cards I want to feature. So, and I explained that. 1226 was the Jordan XRC episode with Darren Rovell. We recorded it so that he could use it for his journalism, for his write-up, the story that came out shortly after that. And I used it to excerpt or abridge or edit our conversation into something that I thought would be helpful to my listeners. I'm not doing writing as much. I'm not doing very much video. I'm mainly the spoken word and interviewing interesting people like Darren. He's got CLCT, which I guess is collect, but it looks like click to me as well. Looking forward to seeing how that grows. And he's reporting what's going on in our great hobby. 1226A, I put suffix when it's something that I'm sliding in there because it's not expected. That was the tribute to Bill Walton, one of my 2 favorite college centers. Just gone too young, and even bad health toward the end. It's really sad. I just wonder what he would have done if he had been healthy the whole time, because he really understood the flow of the game. 1227 was the Michael Jordan XRC. I called it the rejoinder. That was my reaction to his article. I'm sure I agreed with 90% of what he had, but I wanted to clarify again. Some of my statements are not opinions, they're facts, because I was there and I wanted to set the record straight. And yet he's writing a story, gathering from many sources. And thanks, Darren, for suggesting that and trying to give people greater insight into what is something that people will. I guess you're not going to be convinced one way or the other if you're in one camp or the other. I tried to straddle that. 1228 was the hockey hobby box semifinals. I had 4 boxes there, and as a courtesy, I get boxes from all the companies over the years. I don't want to be just doing brand new cards. I don't want to be doing just vintage cards. I don't want to be just doing thematic episodes about problems in the hobby or opportunities in the hobby. I want to be bouncing around. And yet when I'm doing these box reviews, when I'm doing them in an audio fashion, I'm finding positive things to say about it, but I want to draw in insights from the past. I'm trying to do that. Any feedback you want to give me on that is appreciated. In fact, any feedback whatsoever. 1229 was the Fixing BGS episode. I had scheduled time with Cage Lawyer, as I did a year ago. Never lost for words. I said, let's do dueling questions. He said, yep, my first question is, how would you fix BGS? And I thought, I did say I was doing dueling questions. And I thought, I was concerned that I might answer it in a way. I'm going to be truthful, but I don't want to be disclosing things that I think BGS is getting ready to do. That's not fair. But again, the AMA aspect of Ask Me Anything, I don't want to dodge the question. And so Cage was a good sport. And BGS had been a sponsor of his podcast a year ago. So he understands that it's complicated. 1230 was the Dueling Questions with Chris Sewell, a kindred spirit. We have similar things we enjoy. I think we're different in the sense that I branched off into price guides and publishing and all that kind of stuff. But we both love to buy collections and sort cards and try to find a home for the cards that we get. The collector, investor, dealer in that order, we share some of that. 1231, the Millennial Podcasters with Cage, part of that same session. I was just thinking, how many podcasters out there have done more than 1,000 episodes? He's prolific. I do my way. He does his way. And there's a short list of people out there that have consistently put out content and don't give up I think there's two ways to do it, and they both take a long time. One is to just do an hour at a time and let her rip, make it uncut, just a live episode. And the other is what I'm doing, which probably takes an hour for the 15 minutes, is to edit it, to try to give people drive time info that's cutting out some of the fluff and giving the essence of the articles. But Cage, again, a pretty amazing, prolific podcaster, influencer, whatever you want to say, YouTuber. 1232 was the beginning of the father-son episodes with 4 different families, all of which that I've had on the list for a while, in most cases, like Steve and Chris Ivy. I knew Steve before I knew Chris, but I've been trying for a couple of years to get them on, and they were traveling or something. So finally got Steve and Chris to sit down together and visit with me, and I think they had a good time. I certainly had a good time, but Steve is the co-founder of Heritage, and Chris is the guy that made sports happen for Heritage. The hobby's a better place for having both those guys and that organization involved. 1233 was father-son with, I say Bob and Shane Zeiger, but Bob passed away a couple years ago. I knew Bob not that well, but enough to know that he was a solid guy. And I'd spent a little bit more time with Shane at the shows here when he's been popping down from Iowa, and thought he had something to say. So I was looking forward to that. It didn't disappoint. We have some similar ways that we do certain things. And it was great comparing notes with a guy and knowing the pedigree, because I remember his mom and dad being at all the shows back in the day. 1233A was the tribute to Zeke from Cabin Creek, Jerry West, one of my middle school idols when I was living in West Virginia, in Wheeling, and he was amazing. Just amazing. So I hope I did Jerry West justice, not just for being a logo, but again, being in the Hall of Fame 3 different ways. 1234 was the father-son with Ken Golden and his son, Paul. I really originally was thinking it was going to be Ken, and we're going to talk about Paul, his dad, that was more my contemporary. I knew Paul back in the day, but been passed away for a while, had a heart attack, which Ken gets into. But young Paul is 10 and probably going to take after his grandpa and his dad, which is big shoes to fill, but enjoyed that and hope you did too. But Ken is a ball of fire. He's always been that way. I remember him when he was young. He still seems young to me because he's very high energy. 1235 was the father-son with Ron and Kyber Oser. I've had lots of interactions with Ron over the years, less with Kyber, but certainly aware of his journalistic and write-up excellence. He probably will always have a job in the hobby because he's really good at what he does. Same with Ron. So they're sharp guys. What I didn't realize that came out is they've worked together more than I realized. I knew they were, I thought that was cool to have a son that's sharp, that works in the industry, and to look out for each other. And they're following some similar footsteps. 1236A was the tribute to Willie Mays. Whenever I can't do Willie Mays, no matter what I do, the comparisons with Mickey Mantle just come up. They don't want to compare to Hank Aaron or Roberto Clemente. They just want to compare to Mantle. And frankly, I think the gap between Mays and Mantle has tightened since that time. The 51 Bowman, Mantle, and Mays have the same distribution. They're in the same series. So that's a fair comparison. 52 tops, not as fair, because 52 tops Mantle, way tougher than 52 tops Mays. Okay. And what people aren't talking about enough, I think, is 53 tops, which is the other way around. Even though the Mantle is more expensive than the 53 tops Mays in 53, but the Mantle's easier. The Mantle is in the regular series, and the Mays is in high numbers. So to me, 53 tops Mays is a sleeper. It's a fabulous card and undervalued compared to Mantle, let's say. Or one of them is overvalued, one of them is undervalued. Let's see, 1240 was the Outtakes from Hobbypalooza. That's been fun. I haven't done that every single year, but I've done it several of the years and really enjoy it. Because again, there's an uncertainty. You don't know what's going to come in. There are people calling in. There's different co-hosts. And so I like that. It's reminiscent of me being an expert witness when you're up on the witness stand and you're getting cross-examined, and who knows what they're going to ask you. You just got to give a truthful answer and smile. 1240A was the tribute to Orlando Cepeda. Again, surprised looking back how he was faster than I thought, because I remember him being a slow runner and a little bit like Albert Pujols, a really big, thick guy. But that's probably me remembering when he was more hurt and older. But he was a great hitter, a feared hitter. 1241, I just felt I needed to do the Bronny hype episode. I'm not wishing him ill. I want him to be successful in life. I'm not sure what that means. It's not that he's not really good, but he's done something that probably only he could do because of his name, of getting drafted way before he really should be. And so maybe he'll play himself into a great player, but I'm not betting on it. And I just want people to not get too carried away with the hype machine. 1242 was the national booth subleasing that I discussed with Rich, and I did to periodically do some set. I think the new regime is going to crack down a little bit. I hope they do it without being too heavy-handed. In fact, the problem is they're the show managers and there's a board, but the dealers, the national dealers, are the ones that elect the board, and the board is the one that hires the promoters, which used to be Brogy and Burkus, those families, and now it's JBJ. So we'll see. So it's hard for the promoters to crack down on the dealers, who are in some sense their bosses. But there needs to be less subleasing and less badges and less people in the area when there's breaking down and all that. 1243 were outtakes on grading from Hobby Hotline. Same thing. You get in these situations and people are calling in and asking questions, and I'm going to give truthful answers, but I can't answer for all the card companies, and I can't really answer for the future of Beckett grading. 1244 ramblings with Rich. There were 3 of those episodes. We just have a good time, and I don't want to have Rich on every time, but every time I have him, it's a lot of fun. We keep a list of topics, and generally they're not deep enough for a whole episode, or we'll do that. But like the next one, which is 1245, the Waters Creek heist perspective. What I said, that was the shock. It had happened just the Sunday before. I was not at the show on Sunday. I went to church on Sunday and I didn't go. I had plenty of fun on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And I remember exactly the display where it was, and it's just very upsetting. Feel violated. There'll be repercussions at the National, and I'm sure they'll be talked about, but it's a really bad black eye for our hobby. More ramblings with Rich. Again, you just have to try to do summaries of the episodes so you can see if you'd like to listen to it. I hope you'll just listen to the episodes. And like I do, I'll listen it 1.5 times or 2x, depends on how good something is, but I generally go a little bit faster. 1248 was the 2024 National Prep, which Rich confirmed that he is not going this year, which very disappointing to me. He's my wingman. I'm going to miss you, Rich, but I got the feeling from Rich he's going to virtually be there. He's going to be home, but he's going to be working, but also tuned in as best he can. I hope that goes well for him. It'd just be agony for me not to be there. And I know Rich is frustrated, but sometimes it's just what happens. Then 1249 was the friction at card shows. Rich and I revisited the security aspects, and we talked about metal detectors and facial recognition and the difference between cash and other kind of digital currency or credit cards, things like that. And maybe even some aspect of time restricted shopping, that when the show gets so crowded, that's when there's problems. It may be that there's crowd control or different things or a limit. I've been at tables where they said, hey, you come back later. We're full. We've got all these chairs and we've got all these people standing up, and come back later. Well, do I need to make a reservation? At any rate, the hobby's changing. I want it to change for the better. And I want to do a podcast that brings in people and issues that help people to think positively about what I hope is a bright future for our hobby. So thanks, everybody. I'll see you at the National.